Beneath the surface of every Catholic family, a hidden war rages, not always with loud conflicts but with slow erosion. The sacrament of marriage, established by God as a fortress of grace, has become one of the enemy's primary battlefields in our time. Pope Leo XIV warns, "The destruction of souls often begins with the quiet collapse of the marriage." The world no longer sees marriage as a sacred covenant. It treats it as a contract of convenience, easily entered, easily broken. Even many Catholics have grown numb to the weight of what marriage truly is, a lifelong, unbreakable covenant sealed by God Himself, a sign of Christ's union with His Church. St. John Chrysostom once said, "When marriage weakens, so too does the Church, for every family is a small church." Today the attacks are subtle. The culture praises personal fulfillment over sacrifice. Entertainment mocks fidelity. Many couples enter marriage without prayer, without formation, without the serious understanding that they are stepping into a spiritual vocation. And so, when suffering comes, when desires conflict, when routine dulls love, many drift apart quietly, long before any legal separation occurs. Pope Leo XIV teaches, "The collapse of marriage rarely begins with great sins. It begins when daily grace is neglected. Small compromises open great wounds. The neglect of prayer together. The failure to guard purity of eyes and thoughts. The slow loss of forgiveness after arguments. The replacement of sacrificial love with silent resentment. These tiny cracks widen slowly until the foundation crumbles. But this is not merely psychological, it is spiritual. The devil hates Catholic marriage because it mirrors Christ. And so, his assaults are relentless, targeting hearts, habits, and hopes. Yet even now, grace waits to restore. The battle for marriage is not lost. But it must be seen for what it truly is, a war for eternity. At the root of many marital collapses lies a seductive lie, that love is a feeling, that marriage thrives only when emotions burn brightly. The world sells this illusion endlessly, in songs, films, and endless advice. Follow your heart. Love should feel easy. If it doesn't, perhaps it was never meant to be. Pope Leo XIV warns, "When love is reduced to feeling, it withers at the first wind of trial." The Church teaches that marital love is far deeper than emotion. It is a decision, an act of the will, renewed daily, often in dry seasons, in exhaustion and disappointment. True love is not proved when emotions run high, but when they run dry and the soul still chooses to remain faithful, patient, forgiving. St. John Paul II taught, "Love is never something ready-made. It is something you build together, daily." The enemy whispers, "You deserve to be happy. Your spouse no longer fulfills you. Life is too short to suffer." And so many, mistaking dryness for failure, withdraw emotionally, spiritually, and physically, not always in grand betrayal but in quiet distance. But marriage, as a sacrament, is not sustained by human strength alone. Grace supplies what emotion cannot. The vows spoken before God were never dependent on how one feels tomorrow, but on the covenant sealed in heaven. Pope Leo XIV teaches, "Marital love matures when it walks through deserts, not when it floats on clouds." The saints understood that even holy marriages encounter crosses. Suffering purifies love. Self-denial deepens it. The husband who serves his wife in weariness, the wife who forgives yet again, the couple who prays when it feels fruitless, these are the victories hell fears. For such love is no longer natural. It is supernatural. And the grace of the sacrament, when invoked daily, transforms ordinary spouses into icons of Christ's enduring, faithful love for His Church. While many Catholic couples begin marriage with good intentions, few realize that without daily prayer, their union quietly weakens. The sacramental grace given on their wedding day was not a one-time gift. It was a wellspring meant to be drawn from continuously. Yet most allow that well to run dry. Pope Leo XIV warns, "Marriage without prayer becomes merely two wills chained together, rather than two souls bound in grace." The enemy does not need dramatic sin to fracture a marriage. Silence will suffice. When spouses no longer pray together, when the name of Christ is rarely spoken between them, their hearts drift. The unity that once burned bright dims into cold coexistence. Conflicts sharpen. Misunderstandings multiply. Forgiveness grows slow. Saint Teresa of Calcutta once said, "The family that prays together stays together." Yet in countless Catholic homes, prayer is postponed. Busy schedules, noisy children, work pressures, all become excuses. Night after night, the couple collapses into bed, weary, without once kneeling together before their Creator. Pope Leo XIV teaches, "The couple that kneels together invites heaven into their home. The couple that neglects prayer invites the enemy to whisper unchecked. Prayer does not prevent every trial, but it strengthens the soul to endure them. It binds the spouses not only to each other but to Christ, who alone can carry the weight of marriage. In prayer, forgiveness is quicker, patience is stronger, peace is deeper. The home becomes not merely a shelter, but a sanctuary. The enemy fears the husband who prays over his wife, who leads his children in the rosary. He fears the wife who surrenders her frustrations to God, who lifts her husband in prayer rather than accusation. Saint Padre Pio once promised, "Pray, hope, and don't worry, prayer is the key to every grace." A marriage saturated in prayer becomes impenetrable. The battle for Catholic marriage is not won in arguments but in prayer. One of the enemy's most effective weapons against Catholic marriage is not infidelity or open betrayal, but the slow accumulation of unforgiveness. Small offenses, harsh words, wounded pride, left unhealed, these tiny injuries harden into walls. Pope Leo XIV teaches, Satan does not need grand sins to destroy a marriage. He only needs bitterness that remains unspoken. In the beginning, offenses are small. Forgotten words of kindness, impatience after a long day, unmet expectations. But as days pass, if forgiveness is delayed, the heart closes little by little. Spouses stop speaking openly. Resentment grows like a quiet cancer. St. Paul warns, "Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil." Ephesians 4 verses 26 to 27. Yet many married Catholics go to sleep night after night with unresolved anger, allowing invisible chains to tighten. The wounds deepen until the very sight of one another becomes a reminder of past injuries. What once was joy turns into silent coexistence, where true intimacy disappears. Pope Leo XIV warns, "Unforgiveness in marriage is slow poison. It strangles love from within while appearing peaceful on the surface." The sacrament of marriage was not given because spouses would never fail each other, but precisely because they would, and would need supernatural grace to forgive daily. The saints knew that forgiveness is not weakness but spiritual strength. To forgive is to imitate Christ crucified, who looked upon those who pierced him and prayed, "Father, forgive them." St. John Paul II taught, "There is no love without forgiveness, there is no forgiveness without sacrifice." The Catholic couple that forgives quickly, even when emotion protests, builds an unshakable fortress. The devil flees from spouses who humble themselves before one another, who confess their faults, who choose peace over pride. Daily forgiveness is not optional. It is survival. Another silent destroyer of Catholic marriage is impurity, not only outside the covenant but within it. The world whispers that once married, all desires are permitted. But the Church teaches that even within marriage, purity must reign. Without it, love degenerates into selfish pleasure rather than sacred gift. Pope Leo XIV warns, "Marriage is not a license for lust. It is a school of sacrificial love." The marital act is holy, designed to reflect Christ's total gift to his Church, free, faithful, fruitful, and full of self-giving love. But when impurity enters, whether through contraception, pornography, selfish demands, or a refusal to remain open to life, the marital bed becomes defiled. What was meant to unite now wounds. St. Paul teaches, "The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband." 1 Corinthians 7 verse 3. This is not a command for domination, but for mutual self-donation, each seeking the good of the other, not personal gratification. Yet in countless marriages, one or both spouses reduce intimacy to selfish demand, stripping it of tenderness, reverence, and prayer. Pope Leo XIV declares, "Where purity dies, demons enter. Where self-control reigns, grace flows." The enemy feeds impurity daily, through media, immodesty, entertainment, and subtle suggestions that freedom means indulgence. Even many Catholic couples fall into the lie that contraception is harmless, that openness to life can be negotiated based on convenience. But the Church, in her wisdom, teaches that contraception not only rejects God's design but poisons the very trust and unity between spouses. Every act of marital love must remain open to the author of life, for he alone is Lord of the gift. St. John Paul II Theology of the Body offers this breathtaking truth. The opposite of love is not hatred but use. The pure marriage becomes a wellspring of peace, tenderness, and unity. The impure marriage becomes cold, restless, and vulnerable to even greater attacks. Purity is not a burden for married couples. It is the protection that allows love to flourish. In the spiritual architecture of marriage, the husband bears a sacred responsibility that few today understand or fulfill. The world mocks his role, reducing manhood to domination or passivity. But the Church reveals a higher call: to lead, to serve, to protect his wife and children with sacrificial love. Pope Leo XIV teaches, the husband's strength is not in command but in surrender, first to God, then to his family. St. Paul writes, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the Church and gave himself up for her. Ephesians 5 verse 25. Christ does not dominate his Church. He bleeds for her. He suffers for her sanctification. So too must the Catholic husband carry the weight of spiritual leadership, not as a tyrant, but as a servant who lays down his life daily. Yet many Catholic husbands abandon this role. They delegate spiritual matters to their wives, remain passive in prayer, avoid moral responsibility, and lead only in material things. In this vacuum the family drifts, the children wander, the marriage weakens. Pope Leo XIV warns, the passive husband is one of hell's easiest victories. The enemy fears the husband who blesses his children at night, who leads the family rosary, who resists impurity, who corrects with mercy, who sacrifices comfort for the sake of his wife's peace. Such a man becomes a fortress within his home. Saint Padre Pio often exhorted fathers, you are priests of your domestic church. Act as such. When the husband rises in holiness, the entire family is lifted. When he falls into spiritual laziness, the family suffers wounds unseen. His leadership is not permission to rule but to serve, to absorb the pressures of life so his family rests under his spiritual protection. Pope Leo XIV concludes, the husband who leads in prayer will rarely lead his family into ruin. A man on his knees is the strongest defender of his marriage. As the husband is called to lead in sacrificial service, the wife carries her own sacred vocation, not one of inferiority but of extraordinary dignity. She is the heart of the domestic church, entrusted with nurturing life, faith, and peace within the walls of the home. Pope Leo XIV teaches, the wife does not stand behind the husband, nor beneath him, but beside him, as the soul breathes life into the body. The world mocks this calling, presenting it as slavery or loss of identity. But the Church reveals its true beauty. In her patience, tenderness, and perseverance, the Catholic wife often becomes the quiet sanctifier of her family. She builds an atmosphere where prayer is natural, where children encounter holiness not only in words but in her example. St. John Paul II called this the feminine genius, a strength wrapped in gentleness, a wisdom expressed through intuition, sacrifice, and unshakable love. Yet the enemy works tirelessly to distort this role. He whispers lies of resentment, envy, and dissatisfaction. Your sacrifices are unnoticed. You deserve more. Your role is small. Many wives begin to view their daily labors, cooking, cleaning, teaching, comforting, as burdens rather than altars of offering. Pope Leo XIV warns, the wife's daily sacrifices may be hidden from the world but are not hidden from heaven. When a wife prays over her children, endures her husband's imperfections with mercy, and keeps the home as a sanctuary of peace, she becomes a living icon of Our Lady herself, the Queen who rules not with force but with maternal power. Saint Gianna Beretta Molla, who gave her life for her child, remains a luminous example. The vocation to marriage and motherhood is a vocation to holiness. The wife's vocation is not passive. It is heroic. Her faith sustains her husband's leadership. Her prayers protect her children. Her example draws down graces that will echo for generations. Pope Leo XIV declares, the strongest Catholic homes are built not on wealth or status, but on the hidden sacrifices of holy wives. When both husband and wife embrace their God-given roles, marriage becomes not a contract, but a living tabernacle of grace. When Catholic spouses embrace the full power of their sacrament, rejecting impurity, forgiving daily, praying together, fulfilling their vocations, their home becomes something the enemy dreads, a living fortress of grace. It is not a home without suffering, but a home where suffering sanctifies rather than destroys. Pope Leo XIV proclaims, a Catholic marriage fully surrendered to Christ becomes an unbreakable wall against hell. The devil fears not wealth, success, or status. He fears the father who kneels to bless his children. He fears the mother who prays the rosary while folding laundry. He fears the couple who chooses forgiveness before pride, who prays before speaking, who offers their frustrations as silent sacrifices to God. St. John Paul II declared, the future of humanity passes by way of the family. When Catholic marriage stands strong, vocations are born. Children grow rooted in truth. Parishes are renewed. The Church flourishes. But when marriage collapses, the Church herself bleeds. The enemy understands this better than many Catholics do. Pope Leo XIV teaches, "The family is either a house of grace or a gateway for darkness. There is no neutral ground." But no matter how far a marriage has drifted, grace remains stronger. Even the coldest hearts can soften. Even the most wounded unions can be restored. The confessional remains open. The altar waits. The Holy Spirit stands ready to breathe life again into dry bones. The Catholic marriage that terrifies hell is not perfect, but it is surrendered. It is not without wounds, but it refuses to remain divided. It is not sustained by feelings, but by daily acts of faith. Such a marriage becomes a small monastery, a living church, a lighthouse for children, neighbors, and even the world. Pope Leo XIV concludes, "The most powerful evangelists of our age are not preachers in pulpits. They are husbands and wives who build holy homes. This is the marriage the enemy cannot break. This is the marriage Christ desires for his church."